I never believed in ghosts until the dead girl started emailing me every night at exactly 11:13. My name is Elias Thorne. I'm 27 and I spend my nights in the basement archive of the Washington State Digital Records Center, breathing in the smell of old paper burnt circuits and cold coffee. My job is to dig up files people tried to bury. Forever corrupted hard drives, faded medical reports, deleted security footage. Most people call it paperwork. I call it evidence. Evidence doesn't lie if you know how to read it. 7 months ago, I joined a government program called Letters Across Species. It pairs ordinary humans with half-orc inmates who have no one on the outside. I signed up because the silence in my apartment was starting to feel louder than the rain on the windows. The first message from Kayla Voss arrived at 11:13 p.m. on a Tuesday. The subject line was almost rude in its shortness. If you're only here to offer pity, don't bother replying. I opened her inmate profile. Half orc, half human. Convicted of arson and 3 counts of homicide at the ArcLight cold storage facility in Tacoma. 25 years. Under her prison photo, she had written in her own handwriting, "I am not innocent, but I am not the monster the newspapers made me." I typed back, "I hate pity. I also hate lies. Maybe we can start from there." 12 minutes later, she replied, "Fine. So which do you hate more?" That was how it began. No romance, no soft words, just 2 sleepless people throwing truth at each other like stones into deep water, listening for how long it took to hit bottom. Through those emails, I learned she was sharp in a way that made me uncomfortable. She never begged for sympathy. She dissected her own life like a surgeon. Mother dead, early raised in a mixed-species orphanage, running illegal biodata shipments, at 20 prison at 23. Some nights, she described the smell of bleach in the cell block. Other nights, she wrote about how people look at half-orc women like they're dangerous machines wrapped in skin. One night, she sent only a single line. "Today they asked me why I don't try to be softer, as if softness is something they ever let me keep." I told her a few things about myself too. My father died when I was 12. My mother worked herself to death as a public defender and followed him a year ago. I'm better with broken files than with living people. I hate phone calls more than I hate Seattle rain. She remembered every useless detail. That was what made me believe the person on the other side was real. Then came the night everything broke. It was a cold November evening. I was alone on the 4th floor, scanning a fresh batch of sealed records from Black Ridge Correctional Complex. I pulled a thick folder at random. On the spine, faded red ink read, "Deceased inmate record, sealed." I flipped it open. The third name on the list was Kayla Voss. Death certificate, autopsy confirmation, internal incident report. Conclusion: died of septic shock in solitary confinement 3 years ago, the night of the so-called riot. I sat frozen while rain streaked the window glass. The only sound was the low hum of the scanner. At 11:13 p.m., her email arrived on schedule. "You've been quiet longer than usual tonight. Power outage at the center." I stared at the screen until it dimmed. Then I typed the only question that mattered. "If you died in Black Ridge Prison 3 years ago, who the hell has been emailing me every night for the first time in 7 months?" She did not reply immediately. 10 minutes passed. 30. An hour. At 1:41 a.m., the reply finally came. One single line. "If a government file says you're dead, Elias, would you believe the paper or yourself?" I felt my jaw tighten. I wrote back, "Don't play games with me." Her next reply was faster. "Then don't read the files like an outsider. Ask for the original physical autopsy photos." I knew I was crossing a line. Using my clearance for personal reasons could cost me my job, but I also knew I was already past the point of stopping. I requested the physical prints. They arrived the next evening by secure courier. I laid the glossy photographs across my kitchen table under the harsh overhead light. The body matched the height and build. Gray-green skin, prison tattoos on the wrists, but the face, the 2 lower tusks, were perfectly intact. I remembered a message she had sent 2 months earlier. When I asked why she never smiled in photos, She wrote, "Because my left tusk has been chipped since I was 13. Looks like someone bit the tip off." That detail had never appeared in any public record or news article. It was hers alone. I zoomed in on the photograph. The left tusk on the corpse was whole. My hands started to shake. I opened a new email and typed every question burning inside me. How is this possible? Did you fake your death? Are you using her name? Why me? She answered only one of them. Don't trust the scans. If you really want the truth, stop looking at my file alone. Look at the list of everyone who died the same night they say I did. I opened the full casualty list for that night. 4 names. 3 half-orc inmates classified as high risk. 1 medical technician. All of them pronounced dead within the exact same 19-minute window when the cameras in the solitary block went dark. Before I left the center that night, one final email appeared. If you want to know what really happened, stop calling me a ghost. The sender name glowed on the screen. Kayla Voss, the woman who had died 3 years ago. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid because she might not be alive. I was afraid because she still felt more real than anyone I had ever known. The next morning, I went back to the archive before sunrise. I pulled every record connected to November 3rd, 3 years ago at Black Ridge Correctional Complex. 4 half-orc inmates died that night. All of them were listed in solitary confinement. All of them were marked as septic shock following a riot. The security cameras in that block lost signal for exactly 19 minutes. The medical server logs had been overwritten in the same window. The forensic team on duty was swapped out at the last hour. 2 days later, the prison signed a sealed research contract with Cerberus Vale, a private biotech company specializing in neural mapping and memory extraction. I copied everything I could without triggering alerts and left before the day shift arrived. Kayla's messages kept coming at 11:13 p.m., but something had changed. Some nights her words carried real weight. She described the cold that never left the concrete floors, the way the guards' footsteps echoed long after they passed her cell. Other nights, the tone shifted. The sentences arrived clipped and exact, as if someone were reading from notes. One night she recalled a small joke I had made 3 weeks earlier, repeating it word for word. The next night, she answered a question I had asked days before as though she had never seen it. I started saving every message and comparing them side by side. The voice did not stay the same. She gave me a lead without being asked. A name Jonas Pike, a former guard who had worked the night shift at Blackridge. I found him in a bar near the river 2 evenings later. He sat at the end of the counter with a glass in front of him, and the look of a man who had carried secrets too long. I bought him another drink and let him talk. He told me the 4 inmates did not die in any riot. They were moved that same night to a closed wing no one on the regular staff was allowed to enter. The wing had an internal name, Echo Ward. The project took memories from half-orc prisoners and turned them into usable copies. Half-orc brains could hold heavy loads of data. Cerberus Vale used those copies for training interrogation models and predicting behavior. The bodies were listed as dead, so the transfer stayed off the books. I listened without interrupting. When he finished, I asked the only question that mattered. What happened to Kayla Voss? Jonas looked at his glass for a long time. She was the first one they kept running after the body was gone. That night I sat in my apartment with the lights off and the laptop open. Kayla's message arrived at 11:13. She described the exact moment I had stood under the bridge after my father's funeral when I was 12. The rain hitting the metal beams, the smell of wet concrete, the feeling that the water was washing me away with him. I had written those lines once, then deleted them before I ever sent the message. She put them back on the screen almost exactly as I had felt them. No one else had ever read those words. I checked the old mail server logs I had quietly accessed through the archive system. In the past 8 months, her messages had come from 3 different routes. A civilian server in Seattle, a node that had been deleted from Blackridge's internal network, and twice from inside Cerberus Vale's own infrastructure. The sources did not match a single person hiding in one place. They matched something that moved between systems. I typed a test into the next message. I changed one small fact from a story I had told her weeks earlier. I said the bridge was steel instead of concrete. I sent it and waited. Her reply came at 11:13 exactly. She corrected me. She said the bridge was concrete. She added the sound the rain had made on it that night. The correction was perfect, but the way she wrote it felt like a database lookup, not a memory she had lived through. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark. I had started digging because a dead woman kept talking to me. Now every new fact made the hole deeper. The files said Kayla Voss died 3 years ago. The messages said she remembered things no one else could know. The log said she was coming from places that should not exist. I no longer knew if I was talking to the woman who had once been locked in Blackridge, to something built from her memories, or to both at once. I only knew I could not stop reading her words at 11:13 each night. The next day I began setting small traps in every message I sent. I needed to see which version of Kayla answered. I needed to know who was really on the other side of the screen. The next day I began setting small traps in every message I sent. I needed to see which version of Kayla answered. I started simple. In one email, I changed a detail from our very first exchange. I wrote that her opening line had been about hating the color of the prison walls instead of hating being half orc. I sent it and waited. Her reply came at 11:13. She accepted the false detail without question. Yes. Those gray walls made everything feel smaller. No correction. No hesitation. 2 nights later, I changed another fact. I said the orphanage fight that chipped her left tusk happened when she was 15, not 13. This time, she corrected me instantly. The reply was precise and cold, like a search result pulled from a database. It was at age 13. The left tusk broke at the tip. But the night after that, I sent a completely fake memory. I claimed I had once told her about a scar on my left hand from a childhood fight at the Tacoma ferry dock when I was 19. That fight had never happened. I wanted to see what she would do. The responses were never consistent. One night, she replied immediately, "You never fought at the ferry dock. You hate crowds more than you hate pain." Another night, she asked, "Which finger did you break?" A third night, she simply wrote, "Scars change with time." Not important. I saved every reply and read them side by side. There were at least 2 layers sharing the same name. One held the data and writing style of Kayla. The other carried the feelings that had grown between us over the months. I created 2 folders on my external drive. I labeled them red and blue. Red contained the emails that remembered smells, pain, small gestures, the way my voice would sound if I were tired. Blue contained the emails that were exact, cold, and always pointed me toward the next piece of evidence. I hated that I was doing this, but I could no longer pretend I was talking to one person. 3 days later, a small package appeared in my mailbox at the apartment. No stamp, no return address. Inside was an old leather bracelet, worn at the edges with a small crescent moon pendant that had been scratched almost beyond recognition. I recognized it at once. Kayla had mentioned it months ago in a message I still kept. The only thing I kept from before prison is this stupid bracelet with a bent moon charm. It cuts into my skin when it's hot and freezes when it's cold, but I never threw it away. Under the bracelet lay a folded note written by hand. The handwriting was strong, the pen pressed hard into the paper. It said only one line. A copy could never remember the smell of antiseptic in the visitation room on the snowy night, but I do. I sat on the kitchen floor and stared at the bracelet until my eyes burned. If this was a game, someone was playing it too well. If it was real, then the real Kayla was out here somewhere. If it was from the copy, then someone was trying very hard to make me believe the copy had a body. That night I did not wait for her to write first. "Is the bracelet yours?" Her reply came fast. "Yes, who brought it to my door?" This time the pause was longer. "Then you're finally asking the right question." I typed back, "I'm tired of this game. So am I. I need to know who I'm actually talking to. Then look at the way I remember." I opened the red and blue folders again and stared at the split. Red remembered the smell of antiseptic and snow. Blue remembered access codes and server nodes. Both used the same name. Both wrote with the same rhythm. Both made it impossible for me to walk away. 2 days later, I found a file that had not been wiped clean enough inside Cerberus Veil's internal servers. The name on it was Echo 7. Subject Kayla Voss. Status conversational instance stable. Conversational instance. A stable talking copy. The words sat on my screen like a verdict I could not look away from. That same night, 2 messages arrived 11 minutes apart, both signed with her name. The first one read, "Don't go near Cerberus from your work computer. They will see you." The tone was urgent, short the voice of someone who had once been hunted. The second one read, "Continue tracing internal node C12. Probability of containing post-echo movement logs is 63%. One of them was warning me to stay safe. The other was using me as a tool. But the worst part was that both of them believed they were Kayla. I sent the same question to both, keeping the conversation split. If I ever met you in person, what should my first question be? Blue answered first. Ask for an authentication code. Identity requires proof. 13 minutes later, Red answered. Ask why I hate the smell of tangerines. That detail is not in any file. I looked at the 2 replies until my head hurt. Then came the final push. At 2:07 a.m., the hallway camera outside my apartment went dark for 12 seconds. When it came back on, a piece of paper had been slipped under my door. I opened it with a knife in my hand. No one was in the corridor. The paper contained only an address written by hand. Sublevel 3, East Service, Blackridge. Below it was one more line. If you want to know whether I'm still alive, stop asking other people. I knew this was a trap, or at least a place no sane person should enter and expect to leave unchanged. I also knew I was going anyway. Before I left, I sent one last message. If this is a trick to lead me there, to die, you already know I will still go. Blue replied almost instantly, I know. Red replied, 2 minutes later, I hate that you're right. I did not know why, but it was Red's reply that made my hands shake. Because for the first time I saw it clearly. One of the 2 people talking to me might no longer be fully human, and the other one might be running for her life, with half her soul still locked inside a machine. I left Seattle at midnight and drove through the rain toward the ruins of Blackridge. The prison sat like a broken ship on the edge of the forest, its outer fence cut open years ago. I slipped through the gap and followed the service stairs down 2 levels until the air turned thick and cold. Water dripped from the ceiling. My flashlight cut narrow beams through the dark. The address on the paper led me to Sublevel 3, East Service. The corridor was newer than the rest of the prison. Fresh gray paint, thick cables running along the walls, doors with magnetic locks that had been pried open. Echo Ward had never been closed. It had only been hidden. The final door stood ajar. Inside, 12 server racks hummed in the dark, their blue status lights blinking like slow heartbeats. In the center of the room was a glass-walled chamber. A metal chair sat inside it. Restraints still buckled dark stains on the floor that needed no explanation. Wires hung from the ceiling like dead snakes. I stepped closer. A wall screen suddenly lit up with white text. Welcome back, Echo Access. Then a voice came from the speakers above me, low, rough, the voice I had imagined every night at 11:13. Elias. I froze. Kayla. No one was in the room but me. The voice continued calm and precise. Don't stand too close to the center chamber. The pressure sensors on the floor are still active. I stepped back without thinking. A second later, the floor where I had been standing flashed red, then went dark. You're here, I said. You're finally asking the right questions, the voice answered. Turn left. 3rd rack. There's a loose drive you need. I followed. My hands shook as I pulled the drive, labeled E7 branch. The voice kept talking, guiding me past pressure plates and hidden cameras. Sometimes it sounded warm, the same tone from the emails that made me wait for midnight. Sometimes it turned flat and mechanical, listing directions like a navigation program. I reached a small observation room behind one-way glass. On the desk was a single monitor, already playing a paused video. I pressed play. Kayla sat strapped to the same metal chair I had just seen. Her hair was cut short and uneven. Her left tusk was clearly chipped. A thin line of dried blood ran from the corner of her mouth. She looked straight into the camera and spoke with a voice I had never heard in real life, but recognized instantly. If anyone is watching this, it means a part of me got out before the rest of me did. The image flickered. She continued, weaker now. Don't trust any death certificate. Don't trust any confirmation that says I was erased. If they kept the talking part of me, they will use it. If I kept it first, I will set it free. The video cut to a second clip. She was paler eyes, unfocused from drugs. Echo doesn't copy a person, she said slowly. It breaks a person into pieces useful enough to keep. The screen froze. I turned toward the speakers. If you recorded this, you knew you wouldn't get out whole. The voice answered after a short silence, or I knew I wouldn't get out unchanged. Boots echoed in the corridor above us. Cerberus, cleanup crew. The voice changed tone instantly, fast, cold, urgent. 3 men. North corridor. 1 has a suppressed weapon. Take the E7 drive and move to the right service door. Now. I ran. The voice guided me through the maze. Right, duck. Don't open the next door, it's wired. It saved me from a trap. It warned me when a guard rounded a corner. Sometimes the words were gentle, almost worried. Sometimes they were pure code, listing coordinates and probabilities. I reached an old emergency tunnel that led out behind the prison. As the door slammed shut behind me, a final log flashed on a small screen on the wall. Physical subject status terminated. Conversational instance. Active, unauthorized external sync detected. 11 months ago, I stood in the pouring rain and stared at the words. The body was gone. The talking copy was still alive. And 11 months ago, someone had pushed a piece of it out into the world. I made it back to my car and drove until the prison was far behind me. My hands would not stop shaking. When I finally pulled over on a dark stretch of road, my phone buzzed. A new email. No subject. Just one line. If you meet me tomorrow, don't ask if I'm the real Kayla. Ask me something only I would answer. I sat in the dark car with the rain hammering the roof. The log said the body had died 3 years ago. The voice in the underground had saved my life tonight. The email said she was still waiting. I still did not know who had been writing to me every night at 11:13. I only knew I would go to the meeting tomorrow. The rain had stopped by the time I reached the abandoned ferry terminal south of the city. The old dock sat empty under a gray morning sky, metal rails rusted and half sunk into the Duwamish River. I parked at the end of the cracked concrete and killed the engine. For a long minute, I just sat there, hands still on the wheel, listening to the water slap against the pilings. She was already waiting. Kayla stood under the broken shelter at the far end of the gangway, hands in the pockets of a dark coat. Tall, broad shoulders, gray-green skin. The left tusk was clearly chipped at the tip, exactly as she had described in a message months ago. When she turned toward me, her gold eyes caught the weak light and held it. She did not smile. She did not run to meet me. She simply stood there and said, "You came." I walked the length of the gangway until only 3 paces separated us. My voice came out steadier than I expected. "On the first night you wrote to me, what did I reply?" she answered without hesitation. "You wrote, 'I hate pity. I also hate lies. Maybe we can start from there.' But before you sent it, you typed another sentence and deleted it. You almost wrote, 'I don't promise to be kind.' You erased it because it sounded too much like your father." I felt the ground tilt. I had never sent that deleted line to anyone. It had existed only in the draft box for 3 seconds before I removed it. She continued softer now. "After you sent the message, I sat in my cell with a headache from the neural scan they ran that afternoon. The monitor kept flickering green. The air smelled of wet metal and old blood. I read your reply 3 times before I could answer. No one else on earth could have known those details. I looked at the woman in front of me, scarred, tired, alive, and felt every question I had carried for months collapse into one single ache. "Kayla," I said, "are you real?" She gave a small, tired breath. That's the wrong question. The right one is how many of me are you talking to? She told me everything. 3 years ago, the death certificate was real on paper. Cerberus Vale needed her off the prison books so they could move her into Echo Ward without questions. They strapped her to the chair I had seen underground, ran the scanners over and over, and carved her memories into data. Echo 7 was born from those pieces, the part of her that spoke, remembered, and felt. 11 months ago, a technician named Elian Voss helped her escape during a server transfer. She was damaged. Her mind had holes. She could not fight Cerberus alone. So before they pulled her out, Voss pushed Echo 7 onto a hidden node on the dark net. Same account, same memories. 2 of them answering me every night. Sometimes it was me, she said. Sometimes it was her. Sometimes both of us. We're writing at the same time without the other knowing. You were never talking to one person, Elias. You were talking to both. The river moved behind her, slow and dark. I asked the question that had been burning since the underground log. Which one did I fall in love with? Kayla looked straight at me. The version you loved might have been her more than me. Echo 7 had all the memories and none of the damage. She could talk to you clean every night. I was the one running, hiding, forgetting pieces of myself. I stepped closer. I didn't love a clean copy. I loved the way you fought not to become just another sealed file. Whether that fight came from you or from the part of you they tried to steal, it was still you. She studied my face for a long time. Then she nodded once, as if something inside her had finally settled. We spent the next 3 days tearing Cerberus Vale apart. I used my archive access. She used the last fragments of Echo 7 that still answered her. Together we leaked the neural logs, the fake death certificates, the contracts, the names of every doctor and guard who had signed off on the project. The company collapsed by the end of the week. The list of dead half-orc inmates was reopened. Families received real answers. The ones still alive were pulled from hidden wards. On the final night, we sat in my apartment with the lights low. My laptop pinged once more. A message from the old account, the last one. It read, "Don't regret that I wasn't the real one. I was real every night I talked to you. Thank you for waiting at 11:13. The account went silent after that. Echo 7 had been shut down when the main servers burned. Kayla watched the screen go dark beside me. Her hand rested on the table close enough to touch, but not reaching. I closed the laptop. She was still here, the real one, scarred, damaged, alive. And somewhere in the wires that once carried her voice, a copy, had loved me back in the only way it knew how. I looked at the woman beside me and realized the truth I had been chasing all these months was never about who was real and who was not. It was about the fact that both of them had chosen to keep talking to me when the world had already written them off as dead. And I had chosen to keep listening. Kayla left Seattle the next morning. She did not say goodbye in person. She left only a short email from a new address. I'm going to live like a person now. Not like a file, not like an echo. If you ever wonder which part of me spoke to you more, the answer is both, just in different ways. I still work at the archive. I still sit with the things people want to stamp closed. But I no longer look at a death certificate the same way. Because I once fell in love with a girl who emailed me every night at 11:13. And it took me a very long time to understand the most frightening thing was not whether she was alive or dead. It was that even when part of her existed only as a voice inside a machine, she was still real enough to make me believe, to make me hurt, and to bring an entire empire down, simply because it had made the mistake of thinking a person could be cut into data without leaving a soul behind.